Understanding the Pain of Betrayal, Buddhist Teachings. Chapter 1. A Journey into the Pain of Betrayal.
Betrayal is one of those experiences that can leave us feeling shattered. Like our whole world has been turned upside down. It's a painful reminder that the people we trust the most can sometimes hurt us the most. But what if we could approach this pain from a different angle, one that doesn't involve blame, anger, or resentment? In this deep dive into Buddhist teachings, we will explore the nature of betrayal, how it affects us emotionally, and how we can use mindfulness and wisdom to transform this pain into an opportunity for growth. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, and by understanding impermanence and cultivating compassion, we can free ourselves from the emotional prison of betrayal.
Chapter 2. The Emotional Storm of Betrayal.
When someone we trust betrays us, it triggers a whirlwind of emotions. We might feel anger, sadness, confusion, and even shame. It's as if our sense of security has been ripped away, leaving us feeling vulnerable and exposed. We might begin to question our own judgment, wondering how we could have been so blind to the betrayal. At its core, betrayal disrupts our perception of reality. It challenges the assumptions we had about a person or a relationship, making us feel lost and disoriented. We might oscillate between different emotions, from deep sorrow to intense rage, creating a cycle of suffering that seems endless. Observing pain without attachment. Buddhism teaches us that suffering is an inevitable part of human existence. But it is our attachment to emotions and expectations that intensifies our suffering. The pain of betrayal is rooted in our deep desire for stability, trust, and connection. When these expectations are shattered, we experience immense suffering. However, what if we could learn to observe these emotions without judgment? What if, instead of resisting the pain, we could sit with it and allow it to be a teacher? Mindfulness, a fundamental practice in Buddhism, encourages us to witness our emotions without clinging to them. When we observe our pain without labeling it as bad or unwanted, we create space for healing. The pain does not own us. We simply become aware of it, allowing it to rise and fall like waves in the ocean. The illusion of control. One of the greatest sources of suffering in betrayal is our illusion of control. We often believe that trust and loyalty can be guaranteed if we make the right choices or if others uphold their commitments. However, everything in life is impermanent, including relationships. The Buddha reminds us that clinging to anything impermanent leads to suffering. When betrayal occurs, it is an opportunity to reflect on the transient nature of life. Instead of being consumed by anger or resentment, we can use this experience to cultivate detachment and acceptance. Detachment does not mean indifference, rather, it is the ability to experience emotions without being ruled by them. The role of compassion and forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about excusing the betrayal or invalidating the pain. Instead, it is an act of releasing ourselves from the chains of resentment. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal, expecting the other person to be burned. In reality, we are the ones who suffer the most. Metta, or loving-kindness meditation, is a powerful Buddhist practice that can help us cultivate compassion, even towards those who have hurt us. By sending wishes of peace and happiness to ourselves and others, we gradually dissolve the walls of bitterness. This does not mean we must reconcile with the betrayer, but it allows us to free ourselves from the emotional prison of resentment. Finding strength through impermanence. Every painful experience carries the seed of transformation. The suffering caused by betrayal can become a path to greater self-awareness and spiritual growth. The Buddha's teachings remind us that everything changes. Pain, sorrow, and even the memory of betrayal will eventually fade. When we fully embrace impermanence, we begin to see that our suffering, no matter how deep, is not permanent. Rather than viewing betrayal as the destruction of trust, we can see it as a moment of awakening. It teaches us where we place our attachments, helps us understand the nature of suffering, and opens the door to a deeper connection with ourselves. Instead of seeking external validation, we learn to cultivate inner stability, knowing that true peace comes from within. Walking the path of healing. Healing from betrayal is not an overnight process, nor is it a linear journey. There will be moments of clarity and moments of deep emotional turmoil. However, by integrating Buddhist wisdom, we can approach healing with patience, compassion, and mindfulness. Practicing meditation, journaling, or simply sitting with our emotions without judgment allows us to gradually process our pain. Instead of running away from suffering, we meet it with an open heart. With time, we develop resilience, not because we have erased the past, but because we have transformed our relationship with it. Betrayal may shake our world, but it also presents an opportunity to deepen our spiritual practice. As the Buddha said, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." In this journey of healing, we find not only liberation from suffering but also profound wisdom and inner peace.
Chapter 3. Understanding Attachment and Impermanence.
One of the core principles of Buddhism is the idea that suffering arises from attachment. We become attached to people, relationships, and our expectations of how things should be. When betrayal happens, it feels like the rug has been pulled out from under us, forcing us to confront the impermanence of life, the nature of attachment and its role in suffering. In Buddhist thought, attachment is the root of suffering, dukkha. We often mistake attachment for love, believing that holding onto relationships, emotions, or material things will bring us security. However, this clinging only creates an illusion of stability. When those attachments are broken, whether through betrayal, loss, or change, we experience pain, disappointment, and resentment. The stronger our attachment, the greater our suffering. Buddhism does not advocate detachment in a cold or indifferent way, but rather encourages us to cultivate a balanced, mindful relationship with everything in life. True love and connection arise when we embrace impermanence, allowing relationships to flow naturally without excessive clinging or fear of loss. Impermanence, the fundamental law of existence. The Buddha taught that everything in life is transient. Just as joy and happiness come and go, so too do pain and suffering. Betrayal is not permanent. It is an experience that will pass. Like all other emotions, when we cling to the idea that things must remain a certain way, we create our own suffering. But if we embrace impermanence, we can begin to let go of the intense grip betrayal has on our hearts. Contemplating impermanence, anicca, helps us to see life as it truly is, a continuous process of change. Just as the seasons shift and rivers flow, our emotions, relationships, and experiences are always in motion. When we resist change, we suffer. When we accept it, we find peace. Mindfulness and letting go. One way to cultivate an awareness of impermanence is through mindfulness, sati. By observing our thoughts and emotions without attachment, we can recognize their fleeting nature. Instead of identifying with pain or betrayal as something fixed, we learn to see them as passing clouds in the sky of our consciousness. Practicing mindfulness allows us to respond to betrayal with wisdom rather than reactivity. Instead of dwelling on what was lost, we acknowledge the pain, sit with it, and allow it to move through us. This practice doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It means allowing them to arise, witnessing them with compassion, and then letting them go. The middle path. Finding balance in relationships. Buddhism teaches the middle way, a path of balance between indulgence and aversion. When it comes to relationships, this means appreciating and cherishing the people in our lives without becoming overly dependent on them for our happiness. It means loving deeply while understanding that all things, including relationships, are subject to change. If betrayal occurs, instead of viewing it as a personal failure or injustice, we can see it as part of life's unfolding process. This shift in perspective transforms our suffering into an opportunity for wisdom and growth. We begin to realize that our happiness is not dependent on external circumstances but on our inner peace and acceptance of reality. Compassion and forgiveness. One of the most powerful antidotes to suffering caused by betrayal is compassion, both for ourselves and for those who have hurt us. In Buddhism, metta, loving kindness, and karuna, compassion, are essential virtues that help us navigate pain without bitterness. Holding on to resentment only deepens our suffering, while forgiveness liberates us from the chains of past wounds. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harmful actions or allowing ourselves to be mistreated. Rather, it means releasing the emotional burden of anger and hatred. By recognizing that all beings act out of their own ignorance and suffering, we can cultivate understanding instead of vengeance. Practical applications. Walking the path of freedom. 1. Meditation on impermanence. Reflect daily on the changing nature of life. Observe how thoughts and emotions arise and fade away, reinforcing the understanding that nothing is permanent. 2. Mindful breathing. When painful emotions surface, practice mindful breathing. With each inhale, acknowledge your pain. With each exhale, release attachment to the past. 3. Compassion practices. Engage in loving kindness meditation, sending good wishes to yourself and others, even those who have hurt you. 4. Non-attachment in relationships. Appreciate relationships for what they are in the present moment, without clinging to expectations of permanence. 5. Journaling and reflection. Write about your experiences with impermanence and how accepting change has brought you peace. The liberation found in letting go. By understanding attachment and impermanence, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. We learn to embrace each moment with gratitude, knowing that both joy and pain are temporary visitors in the grand journey of life. In letting go, we do not lose. We gain the profound peace that comes from living in harmony with the truth of existence.
Chapter 4. Transforming Pain Through Mindfulness.
Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present with our experiences, without resistance or attachment. When we apply mindfulness to betrayal, we can observe our emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can take a step back and witness our pain with curiosity and compassion. Observing emotions without attachment. A powerful meditation practice for dealing with betrayal is noting, where we simply observe and name our emotions as they arise. For example, anger is here. Sadness is present. There is a feeling of betrayal. By acknowledging our emotions without identifying with them, we create space between ourselves and our suffering. This practice helps us realize that emotions are not who we are. They are merely passing states of mind. Understanding the nature of emotional pain. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we resist reality. Pain is an inevitable part of life, but suffering is optional. It is the mental anguish that comes from clinging to or resisting our experiences. When betrayal occurs, our minds often replay the event, fueling anger, resentment, or sadness. However, mindfulness helps us break this cycle by recognizing thoughts and emotions as impermanent. When we sit with our emotions instead of reacting, we begin to notice their transient nature. Just like waves in the ocean, emotions arise, peak, and eventually fade away. This realization allows us to develop equanimity, a deep inner stability that remains unaffected by external circumstances. Cultivating compassion and forgiveness. One of the most transformative aspects of mindfulness is its ability to cultivate compassion. When someone betrays us, it is natural to feel hurt, but holding on to anger only deepens our suffering. Through mindfulness, we can begin to understand that those who cause harm often act out of their own pain and ignorance. Practicing loving kindness, meditation can help shift our perspective. This involves sending well wishes to ourselves and others, even those who have hurt us. A simple practice includes silently repeating, "May I be free from suffering. May I find peace and healing. May the person who hurt me find wisdom and kindness." At first, offering compassion to someone who has betrayed us may feel impossible, but with practice, we realize that forgiveness is not about condoning their actions. It is about freeing ourselves from the emotional burden of resentment. The power of acceptance. Mindfulness teaches us to embrace the present moment as it is, rather than how we wish it to be. Acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. It means recognizing reality without resistance. When we accept what has happened, we stop fueling the pain with our thoughts and begin the process of healing. To cultivate acceptance, try the practice of mindful breathing. When emotions of betrayal arise, take a deep breath and acknowledge, "I feel pain, and that is okay. This moment is difficult, but it will pass. I can meet this experience with kindness and patience." Each breath serves as a gentle reminder that we are alive, that we can endure difficulty, and that each moment is an opportunity for growth. Transforming pain into wisdom. Through mindfulness, pain becomes a teacher rather than an enemy. Every difficult experience offers an opportunity to cultivate inner strength, wisdom, and resilience. Instead of being consumed by betrayal, we can ask, "What can I learn from this? How can this experience deepen my understanding of impermanence and non-attachment? How can I use this pain to become more compassionate and understanding toward myself and others?" The answers to these questions guide us toward true healing. Over time, we realize that even the most painful experiences have the potential to open our hearts and deepen our wisdom. Practical steps to heal with mindfulness. 1. Daily meditation. Set aside time each day for silent reflection. Focus on your breath and observe thoughts without judgment. 2. Journaling. Write about your emotions and how they change over time. This helps externalize pain and gain clarity. 3. Mindful walking. Take slow, intentional steps, focusing on each movement and the sensations in your body. This grounds you in the present moment. 4. Self-compassion practices. Speak to yourself with kindness, as you would a dear friend. 5. Seeking community. Engage in mindfulness groups or Dharma talks to support your practice and share your experiences with others. By embracing mindfulness, we shift from suffering to understanding, from pain to transformation. Instead of being defined by betrayal, we use it as a catalyst for personal growth and liberation.
Chapter 5. Compassion. The Path to True Healing.
One of the most profound lessons in Buddhism is the power of compassion, not just for ourselves, but also for those who have hurt us. When we are betrayed, our first instinct may be to hold on to resentment and see the betrayer as our enemy. But what if we could shift our perspective? Understanding the roots of betrayal. The Buddha taught that people act out of ignorance and suffering. Those who betray others are often struggling with their own inner turmoil. While this does not justify their actions, understanding that they too are caught in cycles of suffering allows us to soften our hearts and release ourselves from the weight of hatred. Instead of viewing betrayal as a personal attack, we can begin to see it as an expression of the betrayer's unresolved pain. This shift in perspective helps us move from victimhood to empowerment. When we recognize that suffering is universal, we can respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. The power of loving-kindness meditation. Loving-kindness meditation, metta, is a powerful practice for cultivating compassion. It involves silently repeating phrases such as, "May I be free from suffering. May I find peace and happiness. May the betrayer be free from suffering. May they find peace and happiness." This practice does not mean we excuse their behavior or continue toxic relationships. It simply means we release ourselves from the burden of anger, allowing us to move forward with greater clarity and peace. Metta meditation trains the heart to respond with understanding rather than resentment, opening a space for emotional healing. Practicing self-compassion. True compassion begins within. Before we can extend kindness to those who have wronged us, we must first learn to be kind to ourselves. Betrayal can leave deep wounds, often leading to self-doubt, shame, or feelings of unworthiness. Instead of harsh self-judgment, we can practice self-compassion by acknowledging our pain without suppressing it, speaking to ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend, recognizing that suffering is a shared human experience. By treating ourselves with gentleness, we cultivate the emotional resilience needed to extend compassion outward. Forgiveness as liberation. Forgiveness in Buddhism is not about condoning wrongdoing. It is about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment. Holding on to anger and bitterness is like carrying a heavy burden. We suffer more than the person who wronged us. Forgiveness is an act of self-liberation, a conscious choice to unburden our hearts. To practice forgiveness, we can reflect on the impermanence of emotions. Just as anger arises, it also fades. When we cling to resentment, we trap ourselves in suffering. When we choose forgiveness, we reclaim our inner peace. Compassion in action. Compassion is not just a meditation practice, it is a way of life. We can integrate compassion into our daily interactions by practicing deep listening when others express their pain, offering kind words instead of criticism, helping those in need, even in small ways, releasing grudges that no longer serve us. When we cultivate compassion, we transform our inner world. We become more patient, more understanding, and more open to life's ever-changing nature. In doing so, we pave the path to true healing, not only for ourselves but for the world around us.
Chapter 6. The role of forgiveness in letting go.
Forgiveness in Buddhism is not about condoning harmful actions. It is about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment. When we hold on to grudges, we keep the wounds of betrayal fresh, preventing ourselves from truly healing. Understanding the nature of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gradual process. It begins with acknowledging our pain and allowing ourselves to feel it fully. Instead of suppressing our emotions or pretending they do not exist, we bring awareness to them with mindfulness. This does not mean dwelling on the past but rather allowing ourselves to process our emotions without attachment or resistance. The Buddha taught that clinging to anger is like holding onto a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. We are the ones who get burned. When we choose to forgive, we are not absolving others of responsibility for their actions, but we are making a conscious decision to no longer carry the burden of anger and resentment. The role of mindfulness in forgiveness. Mindfulness plays a crucial role in the practice of forgiveness. By cultivating present moment awareness, we learn to observe our emotions without being consumed by them. When painful memories arise, instead of reacting with bitterness, we can acknowledge them with compassion and allow them to pass, like clouds drifting across the sky. One effective mindfulness practice is to sit quietly and focus on the breath. With each inhale, we bring awareness to the pain we carry. With each exhale, We imagine releasing the emotional weight that binds us. Over time, this practice helps us loosen our grip on past hurts, allowing healing to take place. Cultivating compassion and empathy. Compassion is at the heart of forgiveness. When we recognize that those who hurt us are often acting from their own suffering, we create space for empathy. This does not mean excusing their behavior, but it does help us shift from anger to understanding. A powerful way to cultivate compassion is through loving kindness meditation, metta. In this practice, we silently repeat phrases such as, "May I be free from suffering. May I find peace and healing. May those who have hurt me find wisdom and kindness." At first, sending well wishes to those who have wronged us may feel impossible. But with time and practice, we begin to soften the rigid boundaries of resentment, opening ourselves to emotional freedom. The power of letting go. Letting go does not mean forgetting or pretending that harm never happened. It means choosing not to let the pain define us. When we forgive, we reclaim our inner peace. Instead of being prisoners of past hurts, we step into the present with clarity and openness. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. It is the act of setting down the heavy burden of resentment and walking forward with a heart unburdened by the past. As we cultivate this practice, we begin to experience the true freedom that arises from letting go.
Chapter 7. Moving Forward. Finding Strength in Adversity.
Betrayal, as painful as it is, can be an opportunity for growth. Through Buddhist wisdom, we learn that suffering is not something to be avoided, but something to be understood and transformed. The nature of suffering and transformation. Pain is an inevitable part of life, but suffering is optional. This profound teaching reminds us that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. When we shift our perspective, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and cultivate resilience in the face of adversity. Understanding the temporary nature of emotions. Emotions, no matter how intense, are impermanent. Just as a storm eventually passes, so too will the emotions of betrayal, grief, and anger. Instead of resisting or suppressing them, we can observe them mindfully, acknowledging their presence without allowing them to consume us. Through mindfulness practice, we develop the ability to sit with discomfort, recognizing that all feelings come and go. Cultivating compassion to lighten the burden. Compassion is a powerful tool for healing. When we cultivate understanding, both for ourselves and for those who have hurt us, we lighten the burden of resentment. This does not mean excusing harmful actions, but rather recognizing that all beings act from their own level of awareness and suffering. By practicing loving kindness, metta, we extend well wishes to ourselves and others, fostering emotional liberation. The freedom found in forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about condoning betrayal but about reclaiming our inner peace. Holding on to anger and resentment only prolongs our suffering. When we choose to let go, we liberate ourselves from the cycle of pain. Forgiveness is an act of self-compassion, a conscious decision to prioritize our well-being over past wounds. It allows us to move forward with a lighter heart, embracing new possibilities. Practical steps to heal and move forward. Mindful reflection. Spend time in meditation, observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment. Journaling. Writing about your feelings can provide clarity and help process pain constructively. Loving kindness meditation. Send compassionate thoughts to yourself and others, softening the grip of resentment. Releasing attachment. Accept that the past cannot be changed, but your present and future remain within your control. By integrating these practices into our daily lives, we develop the strength to rise above adversity, transforming pain into wisdom and suffering into peace.
Chapter 8. Conclusion. A Call to Reflection.
Betrayal is a universal human experience, one that tests our emotional resilience and challenges our understanding of trust. But through the teachings of Buddhism, we can approach this pain with a new perspective, one rooted in mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. If you've ever experienced betrayal, take a moment to reflect. How has this pain shaped you? What lessons can you learn from it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations into mindfulness and emotional well-being. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of betrayal. I look forward to continuing this exploration with you.